Welcome back to another session on my Caribbean and Latin American news channel now. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon. And today we are going to be looking at a very interesting title, Trump freezes Venezuelan plan, Putin and Maduro laugh as US loses grip. Now, we have been saying that there is an impending war between the United States and Venezuela. The United States has been looking at Venezuela ever since the Chavez government, the Hugo Chavez government, came into being in 1988 and under the socialist revolution, in which he thought that he should nationalize key industries of his nation. Remember now that the United States believes in the neoliberal system of economic development, where private sectors, the private industries, control the public resources that should belong to the state, to the government, and to the people. Now, when you have these, particularly in the hands of foreign private interests and economic elites, that you are going to find that the citizens hardly ever get anything from their own resources. So you have had presidents and prime ministers who have come up and who have said from Iran, from the days of Iran in 1953, when the United States overthrew that Mossadegh government, right? And subsequent governments, like the government in Chile under Salvador Allende and under Prime Minister Michael Manley of Jamaica, and I think Burnham of Guyana. They wanted to ensure that the natural resources be state-owned and that these private entities who own them or who have large investments in these companies, not necessarily own them, but who have stocks and who have, as I said, a lot of investments, major investments in these companies, that they pay their fair deal, that they pay their taxes. However, the United States doesn't want that. The United States wants to, get as much profit at the expense of the citizens of the country that who own the natural resources. So we had Chavez, who is Nicolás Maduro, or was Nicolás Maduro's predecessor, and he wanted now to have the state control a lot of the natural resources that were given over to foreign investors, so-called foreign investors. When you hear the term foreign investors, you ought to be skeptical, because oftentimes what they do, they come and they control your natural resources and even your assets, the assets of these countries. For example, you have in Jamaica, where many Jamaicans do not have access to their beaches because these foreign investors came to Jamaica and they bought up all of these, beachfront homes, turned them into hotels, right? And then say that they are privately owned, so Jamaicans no longer have access to their own beaches, something that is of nature and should be free, that God does not charge us for the rain that he showers us with, does he? And for the sunlight that brightens our day. But yet the government has privatized, has allowed, that's the government of Jamaica, has allowed foreign investors to control the beaches there, beautiful beaches that these foreign investors have controlled. And then our people, Jamaicans, are not allowed to, take a bath, to swim in and to enjoy the natural resources of their country. So similarly for the minerals that may exist there, whether it's oil or you might have also natural resources such as gold or the rare earth minerals, whatever you might have, the United States and other foreign investors, billionaires, want to control them, and they want to make obscene profits. And we're not suggesting here that they should not be able to make some profits, because that's the reason why you invest in something. You invest in something because you want to receive some economic profits. That is natural. I don't have any problems with that. The problem is that they tend also to break a lot of the laws. They don't want to pay the taxes, right? And they do not also want to give back the country anything, any major share of the profits that have been made, which it should be halved, right? Half of the profit should go to the investor, half to the country or more, because it's the country's natural resources. And had it not been for them, you would not have been able to make such a huge profit anyway. All right, so perhaps we should say, 2/3 of the profits should go back to the country because the country has a lot of things to do. The state has a lot of obligation to its citizens. It has to educate them, it has to take care of their health, it has to fix infrastructure, build roads, etc., etc., etc. Now, that is what the United States wanted to do under Hugo Chavez, and he told them no. And we saw that the United States launched a coup against Venezuela in 2002. Well, they weren't successful because, at the time, Chavez had access to Cuban intelligence, among others who might have helped him. Now, we know that Hugo Chavez died sometime in 2013. I think it was 2012 or 2013 that he died, and that the Nicolás Maduro was his successor as being president of Venezuela. Now, when he came to the presidency, from that time, the United States has been trying to get him out of office and to depose the government of Nicolás Maduro because of the large oil reserves that he sits atop of, right? And the United States desires to control it. I think there was a statement, I'm not quoting verbatim, in which Trump suggested in his first administration, his first regime, that how could we allow that crazy guy to sit atop of the largest oil reserves in the world and not want to arrest it from him? Why should we allow him to do that when we can use that oil to enrich ourselves? Right? This is how he said it verbatim, but that's exactly his sentiments were of that nature. Now, the fact of the matter is that since that regime, that's the first Trump regime, I mean, we saw in 2019, the United States installed a president, that's Juan Guaido, to be the successor of Nicolás Maduro without casting a vote. He just installed that he should be the president. And he went to the US Congress and they welcomed him there, right? As if they were legitimizing, as it were, certifying his presidency. Now don't you think that was too far? And, that didn't work out because the Venezuelan military is actually committed and loyal to the Maduro regime. Now, Trump was unsuccessful in 2019, and here he's back at it again. Not to mention that in 2019 too, I think could be 2020, that during the pandemic, that there was another failed coup that Trump, before he demitted office in 2020, launched on the regime of Nicolás Maduro, and it failed, evidently, and Nicolás Maduro was not ousted. Since then, they have been having, elections that the United States has said that, is not free. It was never or was not free nor fair. And they're suggesting that the presidency of Nicolás Maduro is not a legitimate one. Now, Trump came in, and when he came in, initially, I thought there was going to be some, a cool down of this animosity, this hostility, that's US hostility toward Venezuela, because he suggested like he wanted to sit down with Nicolás Maduro and, and have a discussion about where they would move from, from now onward. However, Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State and Trump's national security advisor, told him no, that he definitely wants the government of Nicolás Maduro out. And one of Rubio's objective is that he will kill or use one stone to kill three birds, to unalive three birds. I have to be careful with my use of language here, because the fact of the matter is that the algorithm doesn't allow certain vocabulary to be used on the platform. Now, the fact is that Marco Rubio understands that he wants to see the regime of Cuba deposed completely, and that the United States takes over Cuba. Now, remember that some people are, because Cuba is the largest island in the Caribbean Sea, right? So they are suggesting, I'm sure the United States perhaps understand that there could be a lot of minerals and, even petroleum in Cuba. So it wants Cuba too. It already has Haiti. It has most of the Caribbean islands, most of the Anglo-Caribbean islands belong to the United States, whether we like it or not. Okay? So the fact of the matter is that it wants Venezuela. And Venezuela has always been putting up a fight against the United States. And every time the United States launches an attack, it loses since 2002. So Trump is determined this time around that he will not lose. So he was trying now to impose sanctions upon sanctions and all of the speedboat killings that he's doing. I'm using the K word again, which I should not be using, but sometimes I can't, because that is what is being done. Okay, the unaliving that he's doing, in Caribbean waters, within the Caribbean waters, which we know are illegal and are against, defy international laws and norms. Okay, but the fact is that he continues because Trump, more specifically, the United States military-industrial complex in general, okay, do not like to be humiliated. So they don't like to know that they have a man of what you call developing countries such as Venezuela, even though it's a big country, it's no easy walkover, but it's still not a first world country. Okay, so Trump is humiliated that he's not able to depose him, to topple his government, having tried so many times. Not only him, but successive presidents have tried, from George W. Bush. And he is determined now that he's in his second regime, his second term, that he is going to get him. But he does not want to stand another chance of losing. So he's reconsidering because right now we're understanding that Russia is prepared to help China. And let me just show you, not China, Russia is prepared to help Venezuela. Sorry about that. Russia is prepared to help Venezuela. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to show you a brief clipping from the Hindustan Times, to let you see what is happening and what they're suggesting is happening with regard to Venezuela and the Trump war, or impending war, or a war that might not be, okay, because of Russia's, what you call it now, support and the agreement that they have.
Сегодня здесь, в Кремле, we have created, placed on duty, and begun serial production of the Orshnik Intermediate Range Missile Complex, and equipped our intercontinental ballistic missiles and submarine-launched missiles with modern counter-missile defense complexes.
Okay, so we see here that the president is a bit tentative, is rethinking his position of launching a strike on land, um, on the government of Nicolás Maduro. Now, what do you think? Do you think that Trump is going to back down at this stage of the game? Remember now that we have seen warships, and including I think the US, Gerald Ford's warship, which is a massive war equipment that is used for major wars. So people are suggesting that this could be a ploy for the United States to allow Nicolás Maduro to let his guard down and then launch a strike. Now, some of us are also thinking within the terms of traditional warfare. Remember now that the United States has changed its strategy of war. It is now using the CIA. It has now legitimized. It's not that it's now using, because it has always used the CIA to crush dissidents, political dissidents of Washington's foreign policy. But now what we're seeing is that the United States has legitimized it. So it has given the CIA the permission to launch strikes, covert strikes on the government of Nicolás Maduro, on Venezuelan shore, on Venezuela's land. So that is something that we have to bear in mind. Do you think now that Russia has moved in and has decided now to help the government of Nicolás Maduro? Do you think that that is going to be a setback for Trump, a hindrance for Trump to launch a strike on Nicolás Maduro? Remember now that we have to understand that the United States is paying, it costs the United States of America $18 million per day to have those warships and all of the personnel that it has in the Caribbean Sea. So this is not any game. I don't think that having invested so much money for such a long time now, since, was it in August or early September, that the United States is going to back down. I don't think so. I think Trump is seizing the right moment. He's examining the right moment in which to launch his strike. And he gives a lot of, he makes a lot of confusing declarations in the media about, oh no, I don't think I want to attack Venezuela, even though they're bad guys. And it's almost like Nicolás Maduro is a threat. Well, he has said that. He's a threat to the United States, to the national security of the United States, as he is the major leader. According to Trump, he's an alleged leader of the gang, Cartel de los Torres. And so the fact of the matter is that Trump is suggesting that in order for us to protect America's shore, and also the shores of the region of the Caribbean and Latin American region, it's important that this government be toppled. So what do you think at this moment? Do you think now that Vladimir Putin, who is the president of Russia, and the fact that it seems that he has sent warships here too, war assets, military assets, to aid in the war against Washington. Now, something before I end this video that is very frightening. Could the whole showdown, if there is one, could it involve, could the use of nuclear weapons be involved? That's what I should be asking. Because we are hearing, when you see them talk, you have to look carefully at what they say. Trump is suggesting that he wants to test nuclear weapons, and we don't know where they're going to test it. He suggested that Russia has already tested there. Some people are saying that's not true, and China. So we hope that they're not having a showdown here in the Caribbean region, in the Caribbean and American region, in which nuclear weapons will be tested as the United States seeks to defend its, declarations per the Monroe Doctrine, that it should control the entire Western Hemisphere and the world at large. Do you think that if there's a showdown here between Venezuela, Russia, and the United States of America, that nuclear weapons might be used? Is something that we have to keep in mind while we're thinking that, yes, it's a good picture, this is a good, development, in terms of positive development, I should say, in terms of the fact that Russia might be aiding Venezuela, which could set back the United States and therefore deter war, avert war. But if the United States pushes war, because the United States is not afraid to push it, then will they use nuclear weapons? And the fact that Trump was talking so much about nuclear weapons, and he has said it on many occasions, about testing nuclear weapons, will it be tested here in the Caribbean and Latin American region? It is something to think about, something to really analyze, and perhaps we'll develop more in another video. Now, this afternoon, I'll also be on live. Okay, so check me on a live, not on this channel, but on my Rumination News Network channel. That's RNN, Rumination News Network. And I'll have Mr. Fred Corbin of Barbados and Mr. Gerald Pereira of Guyana, where we'll be exploring a very important topic, disaster capitalism and how it affects the region. Disaster capitalism, how it affects nations such as Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, Haiti, among other countries in the Caribbean and Latin American region. So please join me on that live Rumination News Network. Rumination News Network live. It starts at 4 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please join me there and we'll have a very delightful, engaging, and scintillating discussion. Thank you so much for joining, ladies and gentlemen. See you in another one. Remember now to join me tomorrow again at 1 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time when I'll post. Begin watching the videos so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. Thank you so much for joining and see you in another one. Adios. Hasta luego.